we were talking even about how now young people learning to DJ may be jump right into the, using Serato or, a program to do that as opposed to the earlier methods. So I think there are some things here. Relationship with the music, which is, I would argue, the connective tissue between all of the elements of hip hop. The issue of curation and the development of taste of music, the actual practice of DJing, and how much the manual, the tactile muscle memory from finding tracks. So either, I know you're both the DJs. See, we're in luck. We have two experts here and talk about this.
I think I could answer that question. So this is a song called Good Times by Chic. This is a good one. It's a disco record. Let's play it. So I'm looking at the label, and the first thing I think about is days off from school, President's Day. My brother would call his friends from Corona, Queens. We lived in Jackson Heights. And my brother would call his friends the minute my parents would leave the house to go to work, and tell his friends, bring your records to the house, let's jam. Thankfully, my brother and I had a father who was a DJ. So he had all of the state-of-the-art gear that you needed to DJ at the time. He had 2 turntables, he had a mixer, he had the headphones, microphones, tape recorders, everything you needed to basically recreate the kind of tapes that we would listen courtesy of Grandmaster Flash, Africa Bambaataa, so on and so forth. So when I look at this label, I think of my brother's friends, because these were the records that they would bring over to our house, because my dad is Colombian, so he had salsa, merengue, cumbia as his palette of music that he would play. Not necessarily the kind of songs that you would hear Grandmaster Flash play or Africa Bambaataa play. With DJing back then, you had this innate urge to be creative musically, but you didn't know how to play bass or drums or guitar or piano. So youth, predominantly black, but also Latino, turned or transformed the use or the purpose of a turntable into an instrument. So they would use records and coax sound out of the records the same way a percussionist would on a pair of conga drums or a guitar player would. There are certain parts in the record that you would isolate to use as your sound, right? So here's an example. These songs, whether it was disco, R&B, funk, back then in the 70s, always incorporated or highlighted or featured a break part. I want you guys to raise your hand when you hear the break. Right, exactly. So the break is basically the part of, I'm just going to rewind your record, Phil. All right? The break is the part of the record where... Nah, that's why I asked him if I was cool rewinding it, because this is brand new. The break part of the record is where usually pretty much always the drums is highlighted. Maybe sometimes you'd hear some bass, but the instrumentation would be stripped down to 1 or 2 elements, either predominantly drums or the drums and the bass line, or maybe the drums and guitar. So here, the break part. Drums, you hear clapping and bass, right? Now, what DJs would do, I'm going to take my control record off. I don't want to mess it up. Now, back then, if you were going to cue up to the break part of the record, which was the part of the record that was exciting, initiated B-boy circles, B-boys meaning break boys or B-girls would form a circle and then dance in the middle of the circle and do all kind of crazy acrobatic moves to these break parts of these records. But from song to song, the break part may last anywhere from 4 seconds to 8 seconds. The break part on Good Times is actually pretty long. It's probably over 20 seconds, but it was rare for you to find a break part of a song that lasted that long. So what DJs would do is buy duplicate copies of songs like this and then extend the break part by just looping it manually. It was them queuing up to the beginning of the Good Times in their headphones while the opposite turntable was playing Good Times for the breakers to dance to, or whoever was in the room or at the park listening. And then they would drop the break part on beat, syncopated, and keep it looped. So actually, I'm not going to do it with this record because we only have one copy. So I'm going to put my control records on and use an app called Serato DJ. And basically, it allows me to play MP3s from my laptop. So, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to recreate what looping the break part looked like and sounded like back in the 70s. So if someone was rapping, you as a DJ are basically the band. You're keeping the break part going. And to make the experience of this break part being looped sound more interesting, DJs like Grand Wizard Theodore, Grandmaster Flash would scratch or move the record back and forth and coax sound, enhancing the feel of listening to this break part. Here's what I mean. Thank you. Appreciate it. They weren't necessarily scratching as technical in the 70s. It was more just rubbing the record back and forth. A lot of the mixers didn't feature crossfaders that allowed you to coax all the different sounds that I just did for you guys. So they would just scratch on the record without the use of the mixer, and they would have up and down crossfaders. So when they were done with one side of the station, they would bring the volume down and then let the turntable that they just finished scratching play out, and then keep repeating that and use headphones to cue up the sound. To answer your question, Amy, now you have companies that design programs that allow you to recreate what these DJs figured out how to do before the advent of technology. So now you could hit a pad and almost recreate the sound of me scratching. Right? There are actual students of the art, and my boy Axis Pro can attest to this. He's actually a student of mine. There are people that enter the field of DJing, and because the technology makes it easy for them, they skip all of the important parts of learning how to grab the record, how to coax sound, how to find the break part on the actual vinyl. If you give let's say someone that started DJing on controllers. Controllers basically they resemble turntables or the function of turntables, but they're not actual turntables. They work with a laptop. You can't operate a controller without a laptop. So if you give someone that started DJing on controllers good times and ask them, find a break part, they're gonna look at this and think, what? Like, where? Break part? What am I supposed to do? Like, where am I supposed to find this? But because of my experience, and handling this, I've been handling this piece of vinyl, Amy, since 1982, 83. So it's like I look at it and I know exactly where to go, where to put the needle, what I'm gonna hear. So I know that the break part is right there. See, I found it within 2 or 3 seconds. You give someone that learned how to DJ on controllers this record, although they may be familiar with the song because they have the MP3 on their laptop, and they could find the good times by doing this, hitting a pad. If you tell them, all right, pick this needle up, find a break part on good times, they're not going to know what to do 9 times out of 10. And so I guess that to answer your question, the short answer would be the art, because of the advent of technology, because it gained so much popularity, not just DJing, but all of the elements in the early 80s when movies were being made like Wild Style and Beat Street and Breakin', because of the popularity of music videos, tours, and all the stuff that happened with hip hop music. Now companies are basically making money off it and figuring out ways to, what we say in the book, pick at it and how can we monetize this? So there's record pools, you could download MP3s, you could buy software that allows you to DJ, and it's changed in that way. And so that's why, for me, the book is important. It wasn't just a kid like Grand Wizard Theodore waking up one day and deciding, you know what, I'm gonna create this new style of DJing where I'm gonna put my hand on a record and coax sound out of it because I'm this genius. It was more so, I don't have access to guitar lessons. I don't have a piano in the home. I don't know how to play bass, but innately there's this thing inside me that wants to be musical. And so he figured out a way to turn the turntable into his instrument. And then other DJs followed suit. And it became this way of life for a lot of people. But the art, as far as the DJ element is concerned, now with technology, it's completely different and almost unrecognizable.
If I could just add an element of also the city in relationship to this. So Good Time Chic is was on a top 10 list, but Dr. Buzzard's Savannah Band was not. And I know, looking at people's faces right now, they have no idea what you said in terms of a group, but some people do. And so those who do can recommend to other people how important or how good Savannah Band is. They had to hear that somewhere, right? Chic, you might be able to hear that on the radio, but you had to go someplace to hear Dr. Buzzard, right? Savannah Band. You had to go to someplace to purchase it, right? And so that creates a cycle, right? Where one person hears it, they go and buy it at a record store. Another person hears it, they go and buy it from a record store. And these record stores aren't just like in walking distance, right? People are getting on trains, people are getting on subways, people are getting on buses, traversing the city to buy and pick up these records, much less the needles and other things, of that effect. And so the city becomes a very important part of how things then move from the Bronx to Queens. It's then also a way in which you end up going to somebody else's house to hear this newer record, this other record that they were working into their set, and you now think about sort of incorporating that record into your set.